بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Chapter 12 verse 77 to the end tonight inshallah, and then Tahir, are you ready?
Yes, Ali, but I cannot see the screen though.
You can see the screen? I just shared it. I thought I just shared it. Let's see here. Select this. Okay. I think I closed the thing. I closed the... Yeah. For some reason. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, go ahead, please. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Again, 1277 to the end tonight.
Okay.
Inshallah. Go ahead, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Chapter 12, verse 77. They said he steals just like a brother of his who stole before. Then Joseph kept it to himself and did not reveal it to them. He said, "You are really bad, and God knows full well what you are describing." They said, "O you Aziz, indeed he has a very old father, therefore take one of us in his place. We certainly see that you are righteous." He said, "God forbid if I take anyone but the one whom we found a belonging with, for indeed we would be committing an injustice." Then once they lost hope in negotiating his release, the eldest one among them said, "Do you not realize that you gave your word to your father in front of God, and previously you faulted in the case of Joseph? Therefore I will not leave this land until my father gives the permission or God issues his judgment upon me, for he is the best judge. Go back to your father and tell him, 'O our father, your son committed theft. However, we did not witness it, but we found out about it, and we could not guard against something we could not see. And ask the community that we were with, and the caravan whom we were a part of, and indeed we are truthful.'" He said, "You have come up with a scheme, therefore I will resort to quiet patience, and may God bring them all back to me. Indeed, he is the all-knowing, the all-wise." And he turned away from them and said, "Oh, I really miss Joseph," and his eyes had turned white from grief, and he was really upset. They said, "By God, you will continuously remember Joseph until you become sick or die." He said, "Indeed, I complain to God for my grief, and I know of God what you do not know. O my sons, go and find out about Joseph and his brother, and do not despair from God's mercy. For indeed no one despairs from God's mercy except the unfaithful." Then when they arrived at him, they said, "O Aziz, we and our families have suffered hardship, and we have come with little goods. Therefore give us full measure and be charitable towards us. Indeed, God rewards the charitable ones." He said, "Do you recall what you did to Joseph and his brother when you were ignorant?" They said, "You must be indeed Joseph." He said, "I am Joseph, and here is my brother. God has indeed favored us, for indeed it is for those who fear God and persevere. Then indeed God never fails to reward the righteous." They said, "By God, surely God has chosen you over us, and we were indeed wrongdoers." He said, "There is no blame on you today. God will forgive you, for he is the most merciful of all the merciful ones. Go with this shirt of mine and throw it on my father's face. He will become a seer again and come back with your families, all of you." As the caravan was approaching, their father said, "I certainly sense Joseph's smell, although you may attribute it to senility." They said, "By God, you are indeed still wandering as in the old times." Then when the bearer of good news came and threw it on his face and he regained his sight, he said, "Did I not tell you that I indeed know of God what you do not know?" They said, "O our Father, ask forgiveness for our sins. We indeed have been wrongdoers." He said, "I will immediately ask forgiveness."
I'm sorry,
Okay.
98.
Yeah, 1298. He said, "I will immediately ask forgiveness for you from my Lord. Indeed, he is the all-forgiving, the all-merciful." Once they arrived at Joseph's, he embraced his parents and said, "Enter Egypt, God willing, perfectly secure." And he elevated his parents to the top of the throne, and they honored him. And he said, "O my father, this is the fulfillment of my dream, that my Lord has made me realize it. And indeed he treated me in the best possible way when he freed me from prison and brought you out of the desert after Satan had soured the relationship between me and my brothers. Indeed, my Lord is most kind toward whomever he wills. Indeed, he is the all-knowing, the all-wise. Lord, indeed you have granted me kingship and have taught me the interpretation of dreams. Initiator of the vacua and matter, you are my ally in this world and in the hereafter. Terminate my life as a peace offerer and join me with the righteous." This is news from the unrecorded history that we inspire to you, for you were not present when they decided their affairs and planned their conspiracy. And most people will not believe no matter how earnestly you try. And you shall not ask them for any wage. This is only a reminder for all the people. And many signs in the vacua and matter are passing by them, but they turn away from them. And most of them will not believe in God without setting up partners for him. Do they believe that an overwhelming punishment from God will not come their way, or the hour will not come suddenly when they never expect it? Say, "This is my path." I invite to God on the basis of a beacon, I as well as whoever follows me, and glory be to God, and I am not one of those who set up partners for God. And we did not send before you except men from the inhabitants of various communities. Do they not travel throughout the land and see what the consequences for those before them were? And certainly the abode of the hereafter is far better for those who are God-fearing. Do they not use their intelligence? Just as our messengers were losing hope and thought that they were rejected, our victory came to them. Then we saved whomever we willed, and the guilty people did not escape our might. Indeed, in their history, there is a lesson for those who possess vision. This is not a fabricated hadith. It confirms what they already uphold, and the details of everything in guidance and mercy for the people who have faith.
MashaAllah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, very good. Any comments, questions, or observations?
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Fazely.
Walaikum salam, Anwar. Yes, go ahead, please.
Just want to make a comment on the last verse. God repeatedly, he reminds us that about the detailed nature of this beautiful book, and
Yes.
and it just he keeps on telling us in so many ways, but the way he concluded that last verse was so beautifully put, and it's just the accent on the fact that this book is fully detailed, and people don't seem to pay heed to that. Many people don't. Just wanted to say that, sir.
Yeah. Well, we saw it today. We saw, 2147. That tells you Khatam al-Nabiyyin. It says the last of the prophets. And it's in the language of mathematics that there's nothing you can do about it, okay? Because you see, when you see those names of those chapters like 21, which is called Al-Anbiya, and chapter 47 called Muhammad, and then those two numbers are put together with this Hamim, okay? And the number of Hamims, and that is amazing. And they just basically speaking to you in the language of mathematics, and so that's why it says this is indeed in their history there is a lesson for the people who possess vision, and we saw the lessons that we learned from this chapter.
Yes, all these prophets and messengers, what they
amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
I also want to add that the khutbah, especially regarding the maths, was so profound, and it's just amazing. It's incredible. It's mind-boggling. Thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank you. God bless you too.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Fazely.
Walaikum assalam. Yes, Sazuddin, go ahead, please.
Sir, while we are on the topic of the second unit of the talk in Friday prayer today, I had one comment.
Yes.
It was based on something that you said was so profound. Is that when you were making the presentation of the link between prime numbers and neutrinos, that one of the people asked the question is, what has prime numbers got to do with neutrinos?
Yes.
And of course, the answer to that question is that it is proof of God, and proof that there is a divine design beyond anything that we can fathom, and it's actually an incredible, mind-boggling, earth-shattering kind of a thing. And I'm sure, and I'm not sure, of course, but I'm guessing that that it was probably dismissed by them, because it seems like that some individuals within the scientific community cannot connect those dots there, and of course many do, I'm sure, but
yep.
So it's an amazing thing that that if it's literally physical proof of divine design, and people are not going to accept that. It's quite an amazing thing.
Very true. Very true. It's just a fact that you have these relations in there, and he's telling us, God is telling us that this is a mathematics that you cannot figure out why it's working this way, and we really have no answer to it, and so this is unknown to us. This idea of primes and their indices is absolutely unknown to us. We have no clue how to deal with it. And then you go to these complex numbers and complex algebra and things like that's really governing the universe, and your cell phone and everything that it's modern equipment that we have, and quantum mechanical stuff, relativity, that GPS that you have. that actually has to work based on general theory of relativity. Otherwise, you cannot pinpoint the location of somebody. Did you know that? I mean, that's a fact, okay? And imaginary variables are part of the theory of relativity. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, so that's what you have to do. The so-called Minkowski space is based on a metric which has complex algebra in it, and so it's amazing. But people just don't take heed. And you're right. I mean, the answer to him would be that God did it this way, but the guys he may not believe in God. But the question that he was asking, he said, why is it working so well? It shouldn't. That's what he was saying, basically. He says, why should it be this? And the puzzle is that question that you're asking of yourself, and you really don't have an answer for it.
It's almost like the story of Abraham in a different context, where they saw it and they believed it, and yet later on they decided, no, it can't be right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they pondered and they said, yeah, I mean, he's right. These things would not talk. Okay, he said, go and ask the big one. He did it. Okay, and then all of a sudden they knew that he wasn't talking. The big idol would not talk. It would not be talking. So all of a sudden they sort of paused for a moment. That how ignorant and silly they were doing this. And then they fell back into their own idol worship again.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Salam, Dr. Fazely. This is Anwar. May I make a comment?
Yes.
I would like to make a comment on the Friday sermon, the first rakah, sir. You referred to 7:172, as far as I remember.
Yes.
We have read this and the subsequent verses following that. I have read this so many times, but it was incredibly impressed upon me today in the first rakah when you mentioned that Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. The significance, the importance, the gravity of this is so huge. I just want to thank you for having highlighted that. It was beautifully done, sir. Thank you.
Well, I mean, every time I did the Shahada, I remember this 7:172, and I remember that Rashad used to say, when you wake up in the morning, say La ilaha illallah, and that reminds you of this fact that. But in this case, it basically says very clearly, it says bear witness, okay? And they say, yeah, we bear witness. But it said, lest you say on the day of resurrection, we're unaware of this, okay? But so anyway, this Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, when you go to sleep, when you wake up, if you wake up in the middle of the night, just renew that covenant that we made with God at this historic venue in 7:172, and so that's what we have to do. We have to reestablish that covenant and hold that covenant, uphold that covenant with God, and do not break it.
Subhanallah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Salam, Dr. Fazely.
Walaikum salam. Yes, Nishat, is that you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Can you, maybe toward the end when everybody has asked their questions, one more time go through, like, high level through the mathematics today? I tried to write down as you were talking, but I missed quite a few points. So the one question is that when you talked about the 114th Gaussian, you said Gaussian complex prime versus Gaussian prime, correct?
No, I said 114th. I said, this is what I said. Insert, let's see, where is now? Draw. Okay. See, 114th Gaussian prime is 1427. Okay, and then I sort of took a detour, and I said I pointed out the fact that this 1, 2, 4, and 7 are the same numbers in 2147, which is the number of Hamims in those 7 Hamim chapters. Okay, so when we write this permutation of these things, they also generate things. Like this one generates 114. Its index as a Gaussian prime is 114. So a Gaussian prime, a real Gaussian prime, means that it does not factor out in the complex domain either. Like I brought the example of 19. But 17 is not a Gaussian prime, it's a Gaussian composite because you can factor out in 4 minus I times 4 plus I. Okay? So 4 plus I times 4 minus I is called, remember in Farsi called Ittihad al-Muzdawaj? Okay?
Yes, yes.
So it becomes basically A squared minus B squared. And so
yes.
you do that, so it's A minus B times A plus B. So so you do that thing in there and you do the algebra and it becomes 17. So 17 is a Gaussian composite. So that's what I was trying to get across. So anyway, this one then you also look at this again. This is also a twin prime. It happens to be the 47th twin prime pair. And it also happens to be the 92nd individual twin prime. So, and 114, which is the Quran, was revealed to Muhammad. Chapter 47 is called Muhammad. 92 is also the numerical value of the word Muhammad. Meme is 40. The other meme is 40. There are 2 memes in there. So meme is 40, plus 40 is 80, plus ha, which is 8, and dal, which is 4. So that's 12 plus 80 is 92.
Yeah.
So that's how they speak to us.
Yeah, that was very amazing. I mean, you've talked about that piece before, but just today when you talked about that 114, and sorry, again, as you were explaining, I missed that one little point. So 114 Gaussian prime is 1427.
Yes.
And then how did you get to the Gaussian composite?
I just said that I was just trying to explain to you what's the difference between a Gaussian prime and a Gaussian composite.
Right.
That's what I was trying to say. That Gaussian composites can be factored out in the complex domain, but they cannot be factored out obviously in real numbers because they're still prime numbers.
Yeah.
So they don't have any roots.
So you mentioned that the 114 Gaussian composite is, what was the number that you mentioned today?
I didn't say anything about 114 composite.
Okay, maybe that's where I made.
No.
I made a note.
Dr. Fazely, I think
yes?
Maybe she meant that when you were talking about 2147 factored into 19 times 113, that's what I think she's referring to.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, maybe that was it. 19, yeah, okay.
Because that's when you mentioned about 30.
I said this is derivable from this thing, from the fact that the 19th composite is 30. Okay? And so 30th prime is 113, and 113 times 19 is 2147.
Okay, yeah.
So that's how you derive it. Yeah. Okay. So it's very simple.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, anything else?
Salam, Dr. Fazely.
Welcome, salam. Yes, go ahead, please, Miriam.
I have 2 questions, if you allow me. In verse 1279, he said, God forbid if I take anyone but the one whom we found our belongings with, for indeed we would be committing an injustice. I think it's, God forbid, if we take anyone but the one, and I think by the we, he wants to.
That is true. That is true. Him and his people who were working under him. Yes. Yes.
Which means the system, which means that's actually the way they were.
Well, he ordered those people, the guards and those guys, to go and arrest him. So they took him into custody. Yeah.
Yeah, but I know one time you were referring at this the punishment or law system at that time is that the injustice, you cannot actually avenge or take somebody else instead of the actual person who committed whatever injustice. I know you were one time talking about that, and in verse 106. So is this a general statement?
She says, and most of them will not believe in God without setting up partners for Him. Yes, it's a general statement. There are a lot of people who believe in other things besides God. They do not believe in God alone.
So they believe in God, but yet there are other.
Set up a partner for Him. Every Muslim that I've seen is saying Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So that's you setting up a partner for God, because in the case of testimony or testifying this fact that Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, that's not enough for them. They also bring another person in there and say Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So by definition, that's shirk.
Yeah. And
in the Quran, if you read chapter 63, which is called the hypocrites, it says when the hypocrites come to you, and that's the litmus test. It says when the hypocrites come to you, they say, "We bear witness that you are a messenger of God." See, so only the hypocrites say that.
It's a heavy statement because God talks about a majority, aktharuhum. So it's really. We have to do due diligence to not fall in this without even knowing it. So
that's the environmental thing that one has to avoid.
Right.
Your environment is basically corrupt, and so one has to be sort of immune to that virus, okay, which is this idol worship. So you have to develop immunity. And we cannot do that except by practicing worshiping God alone. And that means that we have to say our prayers, which is the most important thing. We have to give our zakat. Okay? We have to do those things that God is telling us to do. And those are the covenants that God has made with us. And so we have no choice. So we cannot go back on those and not do it. And so it's important for us to do that. Otherwise, most of the people are bad. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And one last question, Dr. Fazely. That's when I was reading the verse 100, and it says, "And he elevated his parents."
Yes.
And in the Arabic verse is abaway. But in other verses in the Quran, when it talks about the parents, like taking care of them and respecting them and stuff like that, it talks about al-walidain. Is there a difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this is. There must be a difference. I don't know what the difference is. But anyway,
yeah. Yeah, that's the first time that I noticed this, and I thought maybe there is a reason. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Maybe it has something to do with the fact that he had several wives. And God is talking about specifically about his mother only, and not anybody else, not the other kid's mother. Maybe that's the case. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, for me at least, how precise is the Quran. And of course, it's up to whether we understand or we get the knowledge, and God willing, He will show us the difference one day, inshallah. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions or comments or observations?
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Fazely. I do have a comment.
Yes, please.
I happened to read Genesis because it didn't say much about Joseph in the Quran. So I went to Genesis and I was reading that Joseph had a lot of different women, but he married Rachel, who died. She couldn't bear children before, so he had taken on the handmaidens, and so those other children, only the last two were Rachel's, but Joseph was the 11th child, and Benjamin was the 12th child. They talk about the 12 tribes, and and Rachel, the mother, died in childbirth, having Benjamin. At least that's what the Bible said. So she was not with them when he became who he became. And it did also say in one of the verses that Joseph that Jacob loved Joseph, the son of his old age, more than the other children. So we were discussing that also, and the Bible agrees that that's what he did, or it's just what it said. So just happened to look it up.
Well, as I said, as a rule, preferring one of your kids over the others is not a good thing. Okay, so that's just simple. That's right. Just rule of righteousness. Okay, that one has to be impartial, and
right,
because it causes resentment amongst those kids that are being ignored.
It did.
So we have to be very careful.
Yeah. And then I have a question, and I don't know why it's coming to me this way. When you talked about the prophets in 21, is everyone mentioned the prophet?
Yes.
David, Solomon, I know that, Noah, Lot, yes. But was Jacob a prophet?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Jacob was a prophet, yes.
Okay. I mean, the way it's written, it just said he was a righteous person and a leader. And I use the word imam, but I noticed that you don't, or I haven't heard you, So I didn't think that made them prophets. Okay. All right.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Fazely.
Alaikum assalam. Yes.
Sir, if I may just kind of interject just a little bit on this issue. The Quran has not explicitly said that Jacob preferred Joseph over his brothers. The only people who say that are the brothers themselves, that our father has done this to us. But it's not, we don't know. I mean, you're right. Of course, it's very bad practice to not be impartial. But we don't know if that's what happened with Joseph. Of course, it could have happened, but there's no specificity. I mean, these guys were. They weren't they were quite egregious characters, right? I mean, they conspired to kill this poor little kid, and then they threw him in the well, and then they lied about it, and even later on when Benjamin or Joseph's brother was caught stealing, the first thing they said, oh, well, his brother did it too. So they were not the most savory of characters to start with, but of course, I think it's exemplary, the patience and forgiveness that Joseph and Jacob showed them, because eventually they did become believers when Joseph passed away. They, who will you worship after me? And so, I mean, it's absolutely plausible that that Jacob did this, but is not explicitly so stated. Is my only point.
No, I mean you talk, but the entire thing which is described here to us, that scene which is described to us, is that this man really loved this kid. Because he keeps saying, I miss him, okay? And he says after so many years, he's not letting go. And he's crying so much that he goes blind. He wouldn't have done it for the other kids, obviously, for any of the other kids. So they must have seen something which they disliked, and there was resentment amongst those other kids because of some kind of action that Jacob was taking. I mean, people make mistakes, including the prophets and messengers. He suffered his entire life. And what is really great here, the whole thing that we have to see, he said that he complains to God. He whined. He whined. And he said, I know of God something you do not know. And that is interesting. Because God also listens to people whining. Okay? If your kid comes to you and keeps whining, you say, get away from me, don't whine. Okay? But obviously God listens to people. And he says that. He says, I know something of God that you do not know. And that is amazing. That statement is absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. One time, Dr. Fazely.
Yeah, walaikum salam. Go ahead, please. Yes.
I noticed that they all come from a long line of people that dream and see things. I mean, from Abraham, I don't know about his father, but it seems Jacob. I'm reading Quran and Bible at the same time, and so it was just mentioning how many of them saw things in a dream. That was the way of speaking to that particular line of people, maybe.
I mean, God gives, you were talking about the thing that he had the knowledge of interpretation of dreams. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, that was one of them. And he also saw.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that God gave him. And so he says that in chapter 72. Chapter 72, God says that except for a messenger, he says he doesn't reveal anything of the future except to a messenger that he chooses. Then he says he gives him certain indications of the future that the other people don't have it. No one knew that there's going to be a flood. Okay? So the rest of the people didn't know. Joseph knew that, and he transmitted that knowledge because of the dream that the king had. The rest of the people, that there's going to be this 7 years of plentiful crops and everything, and then there's going to be 7 years of dry spell. So yeah, that you're not going to have good crops. So that's what he had. That's what God gave him, and so that's what that thing says in the chapter 72. That certain information is given to these messengers and prophets. The rest of the people don't have it.
Right.
Assalamu alaikum, Ali.
Walaikum salam. Yes, go ahead, please.
Can we go to verse 22 of this chapter, 12:22?
Yes.
I just want to make a point.
Sure. By all means. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. 12:22 it says, and when he reached maturity, we granted him wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah.
So this just tells us a little bit about the time frame. That there was plenty of time when he was dropped in the well, and then when he reached maturity in Egypt. So there's a big time span there. Okay, I mean, that's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is true. But the other thing is that again, God gives certain things to these prophets and messengers that He doesn't give it to everybody else. He says, "We granted him wisdom and knowledge." The rest of the people didn't have that.
Yes.
That was my point that I was trying to make. That the rest of the people did not have the knowledge that Joseph had. Joseph had certain knowledge and certain know-how that God had taught him, and so he could have, by interpretation of the dreams, he could actually predict the future, what's going to happen in the future. And he shared that knowledge with the rest of the people so they can actually apply that to their what do you call it, to their food supplies and stuff over the years, that they did not have the drought did not affect them the same way it did the neighboring lands. So they basically Egypt became the breadbasket of that region, and everybody had to go there and get food.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Parvez.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Just looking at verse 100, and this here, when Joseph talks, we do have to realize that Satan is always there to influence our thoughts, right? Because all these bad things happen, he didn't blame them. He blamed Satan at the end. He said that Satan had soured the relation between me and my brother. I mean, he was a man who forgave his brothers, and he recognized that Satan is always there to influence our thoughts, right? This is an important thing in our lives, that Satan brings all the havoc into our lives. Is that correct, or is that wrong?
No, I mean, you're right. He says that Satan did this between me and my brothers. Yeah. And on the other hand, God is most kind. My Lord is most kind.
Because
towards whomever
God fixed everything.
Yeah.
God fixed everything for him and the brothers.
So he brought peace into the family again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why we're told to seek refuge from Satan constantly, because he's going to come in.
But you see also from this whole thing, that even though it happened this way, okay, there was a reason, there was a wisdom behind it. That's the other thing that I'm taking from this chapter. Okay? If they didn't throw him into the well, this would never happen. It would not go to Egypt. It would not become the Aziz of Egypt. It would not become all of these things that happened to him. It would not happen. But it did. So Satan's tricks backfires on him. He thinks that, he does something, really smart or something. But
yes, it does mention in another verse where it says God uses Satan's schemes to backfire on himself.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, you look at your own life. I mean, just sometimes I look at back at my own life, and something that I really wanted bad, and at that time, had I gotten it, it would have been really changed. Would have changed my life completely. Now that I look at the bigger picture, I look at the sort of hindsight, and it's 2020. When I look at it, and I said, "Oh my! If that hadn't happened, I would have been a different person."
Mm-hmm. Everything is connected, and that's done by God.
Yes, exactly. It's sort of like a tapestry of your life. You see, that if a missing piece or something, you like that, don't you? Because of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why I say, put your trust in God.
Yeah.
No matter what happens.
That's right. Exactly. And that's exactly what Joseph did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole theme is about putting trust on God. These two persons who are most affected, they always put their trust in God, and the result was the best. Then they came back together, because Joseph had the dream initially, right, that he was going to be separated, and then they came back again. God's promise is the
exactly.
God's promise is the truth. They believed in that dream from the beginning. Both of them, they trusted God, and through so many years have passed by, and then at the end it happened, right? And they're praising God at the end of the day.
But when he's in the well, actually, God tells him that.
Yeah, you will.
God doesn't. You'll be telling him about this.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was basically
inspired.
He had that inspiration that he knew that God was with him.
But we ourselves in our life, we should always also take it for granted that God is with us and hope for the best, right?
Yep, sure. Sure.
Whatever the situation.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah.
But as long as I put my trust in God, the result will be the best result. He'll make it the best result.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Salam, Dr. Fazely.
Welcome, salam. Yes.
Right now, what you said just brought some thought in my mind, so it might be wrong, but God knows the future. And as you said, if Satan knew that the scheme would turn back and backfire, maybe he wouldn't have done that scheme. But so that means that Satan doesn't know the future, although the time dimension, the way we think about it, might not even apply to Satan and the entity that Satan is. But he doesn't know the future, versus God knows everything in the future. So that's why the schemes of Satan is not perfect.
Yeah, I mean, God says that his schemes are really not very sophisticated. God says that. And he just doesn't have the knowledge or the wisdom or anything to do anything positive, obviously. But he just, he appeals to your desires. That's what he does. His worldly desires. And a lot of people have a lot of worldly desire. And, people think about money, people think about, lust and things like that. People talk about thinking about having, all kinds of things, all kinds of nice homes and all kinds of vanities that other people don't have. So that's what he appeals. He appeals to those kind of wants and desires. And a lot of people fall for it, and people follow him.
Yes, and he uses the same trick again and again, and shame on us. We fall for the same thing again and again.
Yeah. Well, because those drives are very strong. You see? Those drives are extremely strong, and so and people don't have the strength of character to fight it off, so they fall for it. And he takes we just read this chapter. Okay, this young man. Okay, see how he controlled himself in that situation. Okay, in the situation that he was behind locked doors in this room with this woman, and how he conducts himself. And so, but some people will give in, and he almost gave in, because that's what God is telling us. And say, if it wasn't for a sign from us, he would have failed. So he saw a sign from God, and that kept his strength, and he fought it off.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. But again, I talked about this, and then it's about the shirt again, okay? And the shirt is an inanimate object, and as I said, a lot of people would be not knowing that this thing is having this information and this kind of if you like, this kind of specific property that makes it, for example, a blind man to become seer. Okay? And so we don't know that. We don't know how that is done. We don't know the process. But there's a process in there, and all of these things that we see that look like inanimate object, they have information. That information is transmitted, but we just don't have the knowledge. Anything else? Okay. All right. So if there are no more questions, let's finish for tonight, and inshallah we'll hear from you next week then. And have a happy Sabbath. And let's do the Al-Fatiha. We're going to do one extra Al-Fatiha because Mondra's dad just passed away, and so she is in Columbus right now, and that's why she was not reading tonight. But anyway, so he just passed away 2 days ago. So we do soothe her heart and strengthen her her body and soul. So let's do the 4 Al-Fatihas tonight. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Who passed away? Amandra's what?
Mondra's dad.
Dad. Okay, thank you.
Mondra's dad he passed away on Wednesday.
Sorry.
Yes.
My condolences to you also.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن